This is KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guests are from the upcoming production at the Old Creamery Theatre of Dollar Quartet, Emily Seibert and Morgan McDowell. Welcome.
Thanks.
It's good to be here.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you again, Morgan, because you're actually doing a return gig in this show. You were here about this time last year.
Yeah.
Doing the role of Elvis in the Dollar Quartet.
Yeah.
And now you're back.
It's good to be back. It's interesting to let that time goes by and I come back like a year later and not much has changed, but so much has changed.
And you've actually played this part a couple of times since.
I have, two more times.
Definitely want to talk about what you've learned about the part and about the show. Before we do that, I want to say hi to Emily. This is your first time here at KCCK. Not your first time at Old Creamery, though.
Not my first time at the Old Creamery, but definitely my first time here.
And you're playing the role of Diane in the show, who is Elvis's girlfriend.
That's right.
And you are from, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where'd you go to school?
I went to Quinnipiac University in Connecticut. So, you know, Connecticut, homegrown. Stayed there for a little bit. So.
And you've probably, is the life of journey person, actor, has probably worked all around the country. What's been highlights up to now?
Let's see. Well, I've done a lot of work in Connecticut, a lot of work in New York. Basically stayed there for most of the time. And took a little break, worked at a hedge fund for just a brief moment. Decided I couldn't take it anymore, came back to the biz, and Iowa's actually my first Midwest state, so this is an exciting change of pace.
Well, welcome again.
Thanks.
So, Morgan, as we said, you play the role of Elvis in the show. Actually, before, I saw the show last year, so I am, totally familiar with it. But for the sake of those who don't, Emily, can you give us the thumbnail sketch of the plot?
Sure. Well, it all happens on December 4th, 1956. And Sam Phillips, he runs Sun Records. And Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley and Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis all happen to be under one roof at the same time, and four big personalities and four great musicians, and as you can imagine, a little bit of a jam session happens, and it's
multiple jam sessions.
multiple.
And this didn't actually happen like this, but it's kind of based. I mean, there were times when all four of these guys were there.
Oh yeah.
And played and I'm sure fought and jammed together. Morgan, as I said, this you had just started. This was your first time in the role last year.
It was,
wasn't it? And now you've made a little bit of a cottage industry playing Elvis in Dollar Quartet. You've done it a couple more times. Tell me what are you bringing to the part now that is different, or that you've learned after having now lived with it for a whole year?
Well, it's interesting because after you spend a little bit more time in his shoes, I've gotten to spend a little bit more time in his shoes at this point, and I've honed the motions a little bit more, honed the voice a little bit more. On one of my contracts, they brought in like a coach to help us with our voices, our motions, and all that stuff, and it really changed the way that I approach Elvis. And it's I've always tried to bring a little bit of myself to Elvis, so it's not just some impersonation or like tribute artist, because it is a show. It's a play, so it's nice to get to actually act a little bit and bring a little bit of myself to the table. And even though it is Elvis, I get to perform as myself as Elvis. So.
Now, as I recall, when we talked last, you coming into the part, you're kind of a millennial, so Elvis not exactly in your experience headed into this, and you were kind of doing a little bit of a crash course in learning about Elvis.
Well, I've always been a huge fan of Elvis Presley. I love Elvis. I actually listened in high school. You can ask my parents, and they were a little frustrated a little bit because I wouldn't listen to modern music. Not that they really liked modern music, because they were into the music I was listening to as much as I was, but they were like, listen to more modern music. But I would listen to like the Beatles and Elvis basically exclusively throughout my high school career, which is.
But it was when you got the part that you kind of had to start studying his movements and his look.
Right, exactly. Well, and it's interesting too because I spent most of my senior year of college, before when I know like I had this contract, starting to hone the voice in with my vocal coach at the university, and I don't know, it was like such a crash course at like, who is Elvis? How do I be Elvis?
And Emily, your part as Diane, the girlfriend, is important in this show very much. And my understanding is I think she's kind of a composite of 2 or 3 different actual women as well. But is it kind of a challenge going into this, knowing that this character was kind of a transitional relationship for Elvis? Despite everything this guy says to you.
Wait, he leaves me at the end of the show?
Spoilers.
Don't tell her that.
Everything this guy tells you is a lie.
That's probably true.
Most of the things Elvis says are a lie.
At least ended up not playing out the way probably either character expected it at the time.
Sure. No, I don't think it's a problem. I think I always have a lot of fun. It's really just it's like walking into a room full of really talented musicians, and you have a jam session, and there's not a whole lot of acting that I need to do, because I am walking into a room with a bunch of really talented musicians, and I get to listen to that. I get to dance along. I get to sing a few songs, and I don't really think about what happens post-show. I don't think about the Diane-Elvis breakup. I think about meeting his mama at the end of the show. That's what I think about.
Talking with Emily and Morgan about $1 Million Quartet, which is being reprised after a big successful run at the Old Creamery Theatre last year. Obviously went very well, and so they have the show back. So, Morgan, is there anybody besides you who is back from the original cast?
Yes, the Johnny Cash and the Jerry Lee Lewis and the Sam Phillips.
Oh, okay.
From the original cast are back this year.
Well, as I said, I saw this show, and it was just a great time. And Emily, as you said, it's a fun play, but as much as anything else, it's a great rock concert.
Oh, yes.
And you all do a fabulous job. And that, as I've done a little theater, but I can't imagine having to play the instruments and act all at the same time. Is that a challenge?
Well, to me, it's less of a challenge and just more fun. I mean, once you learn the music and it's really in your bones, then it's fun because I get to play my guitar on stage. And I get to perform with all these guys and with Diane, and it's a rock concert. It's like I've been cast in a play where I also get to be a rock star, and it is so much fun.
Yeah, you don't get that opportunity very often.
No.
Well, it's a fun show, and as I said, having seen it before, I know it's going to be another great time. And it opens next week, yes?
June 8th.
And runs through?
July 2nd.
Several performances every week, plenty of chances to see it, and you can get tickets at the Old Creamery website, which is?
oldcreamery.com.
Yeah, she's got it all.
Emily Seibert and Malcolm McDowell. Thanks, Malcolm McDowell, Morgan McDowell. Yeah,
it's all right. I get that a lot.
I'll bet you probably do.
Oh yeah.
Thanks so much for being here, and welcome to Iowa. Welcome back to Iowa, and have a great run.
Thank you.